Welcome back to Boss Economics World, the channel that doesn't sugarcoat the bitter pills of today's economic mess, and where we peel back the veneer of government mismanagement to expose the raw truth behind economic struggles. And today, folks, oh boy, have we got something cooked up for you. We're breaking down what's happening between two major players in the global economic arena, India and the United States. You might have caught wind of the news. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is heading to Washington to meet President Trump, and behind all the diplomatic handshakes and photo ops lies a deeper, murkier reality. As always, we don't just skim the headlines. We go deep. So, let's break it down. Why is this meeting happening, and what are the real economic stakes beneath the cordiality? To start, let's dive into the basic facts. PM Modi is set to meet Trump in Washington amid strained ties. The press release makes it sound like just another diplomatic meet and greet, but scratch the surface, and you've got a melting pot of geopolitical and economic tensions boiling over. Remember, this isn't just about shaking hands and signing trade deals. We're watching real-time economic diplomacy, and it's a tug of war for power and influence. US-India relations were once sailing smoothly, especially under Trump's first term. Modi and Trump had a lot in common. Both were trying to push nationalistic economic agendas, both loved riding the wave of populism at home, and both shared a common goal of countering China. But that's where the harmony ends, because the pandemic, global trade wars, and some good old-fashioned corruption allegations have thrown a wrench in the relationship. Oh, and don't you worry, we'll get to that juicy scandal. So, let's ask a burning question. Why is Modi in such a hurry to make concessions? Why is he retreating on tariffs and rolling out the red carpet for American demands? It's actually quite simple. India's economy needs saving. Modi's got his back against the wall. Since COVID-19, India's GDP growth has limped along like a punch-drunk boxer. In FY 2020-21, the Indian economy contracted by a whopping 7.3%, one of the steepest falls in its post-independence history. Sure, the numbers bounced back somewhat, showing a 9.1% growth in FY 2021-22, but those numbers are misleading when you dig into the employment crisis, inflation, and deep-rooted inefficiencies that still plague the country. Right now, the Modi government needs trade, and lots of it. India is the world's fifth largest economy, but exports represent only about 20% of its GDP, compared to around 45% for countries like Germany. Modi knows he can't risk falling out of favor with the US, its biggest trade partner. And by cutting tariffs and bending over backward on multiple fronts, including migration policy, yes, India agreed to take back thousands of unlawful migrants. Modi's playing damage control. So, Modi's given up some ground on his tariff regime. First ever overhaul, they say. Sweeping cuts on imports from textiles to motorcycles. Sounds awesome, right? Wrong. While these cuts may initially seem like a positive step toward free market alignment, they're essentially giving US corporations a clearer runway to flood Indian markets with cheaper products. But here's a critical point. India still struggles with its infamous distribution and retail inefficiencies, and making Indian producers compete with a flood of cheap imports could end up hurting domestic manufacturing jobs. Local businesses, already reeling from the effects of demonetization and the pandemic, are in for a world of competition. And here's a little nugget to bake your noodle, folks. India's export to GDP ratio dropped to around 19% in 2023 from 25% 10 years earlier. Its manufacturing sector needs protection. But clearly, Modi's banking on short-term appeasement rather than long-term survival here. Opening up the market might reduce tension with Washington, but at what long-term cost? In fact, let's throw out some numbers. Tariffs on textile imports, which India previously levied at around 10%, have now been slashed to nearly zero, giving companies like Gap and Nike an opportunity to supply fabrics and clothing items at much lower prices. But here's the kicker, this erodes the margin of profit for thousands of Indian SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, which already operate on razor-thin margins. Modi's moves might win him favor in Washington in the short term, but the ripple effects back home, the loss of manufacturing jobs and domestic industrial capacity, could be catastrophic. It's textbook economic theory, folks. Free trade's all well and good, until your local industries collapse under foreign competition. Let's dive deeper into the economic fundamentals of this relationship. The US trade deficit with India, a number Washington loves to grumble about, was around $28.7 billion in 2024. While this isn't as big as America's deficit with China, Trump has always had a bone to pick with it. But here's the crux, America ain't buying much more from India soon. Sure, India exports IT services and some goods, but its industrial exports haven't flourished in ways Modi had once hoped. Blame poor infrastructure, complex land acquisition laws, labor issues, and chronic underinvestment in industrial R&D. If someone had asked about those $5 trillion economy dreams Modi launched back in 2019, well, they didn't age all too well, did they? While Modi has responded to the US administration's calls to accept more American imports by tweaking export tariffs, let's be real, it's a band-aid solution. The US will continue to export high-end manufactured goods, agriculture products, and services, whereas India's position as primarily a service exporter, mainly IT, simply won't bridge the gap. Don't get me wrong, India's IT sector is world-renowned. I mean, that sector alone is expected to contribute nearly $194 billion to the GDP in 2025, growing around 8.5% annually. But that's not going to fix India's manufacturing problem. So, this big trade partnership is still skewed, heavily tilted in favor of Washington, and Modi knows it. Sure, Trump and Modi can flaunt their great relationship all they want, but no one's fooled, this is a starkly unbalanced marriage. Now, folks, we can't talk US-India relations without addressing the scandal. That's right, buckle up. The whole thing went kaboom when, late last year, the US Department of Justice slapped bribery charges on Modi ally, Gautam Adani. Adani, one of India's richest moguls, and a close friend of the Prime Minister, was connected to one of the biggest corruption cases in India's modern economic history. The connections between Modi and Adani have long been whispered about in the halls of power, but now it's out in the open. The scandal weakened Modi's credibility on the global stage, raising eyebrows at home and abroad. Legal analysts suggest that this corruption case, coupled with another brewing crisis, involving an Indian official's failed assassination plot in the US, has seriously damaged Modi's standing with the White House. Trump might play it cool during the diplomatic meetings, but these black marks aren't going unnoticed. And Modi knows this. His frantic tariff-cutting spree is half about mending economic ties, and half about repairing his reputation in Washington. Oh, and by the way, did I mention the US dollar? India has strategically decided to keep trading in USD, despite a trend among emerging economies to push for decoupling from the mighty greenback. In fact, folks, you've got economists around the world scratching their heads, wondering if India's missing an opportunity here. Countries like Russia and China are actively ditching the dollar, moving toward alternative reserve currencies, and some wonder whether India might have joined that bandwagon if it weren't for their precarious relationship with Washington. But no, Modi's playing the dollar game, securing cordiality with the US in the short term, but at the same time, cementing India's dependence on the dollar in key global trade networks, making any future fluctuations in the dollar a threat to India's economic stability. Right now, nearly 85% of global trade is conducted in the greenback, and it seems Modi has no intention of stepping away from that gravitational pull anytime soon. So, what have we got here? Let's sum up the mess. You've got Modi, whose economic performance is under pressure, juggling a delicate situation back home with a damaged global reputation. He's given in to US demands on tariffs and migrants, bending his own nationalist rhetoric. He's trying to make good with Washington's demands, but doing so threatens India's local industries, its trade balance, and long-term manufacturing potential. And let's not forget the looming Adani scandal and the questionable way Modi's economic policies align with global power plays. Though the Prime Minister is eager to showcase India as a rising economic power, he's wrestling with unresolved issues. Corruption scandals and policy missteps mean the Indian government's credibility in the eyes of global investors, not to mention foreign governments, is on shaky ground. At Boss Economics World, we don't believe in just accepting all the shiny news bites the media gives us. What you see here is a high-stakes diplomatic dance between two countries, where one has the upper hand for now. For India, the big question remains, will all these economic sacrifices end up fostering real growth, or will this be a case of short-term gain, long-term pain? And that's today's breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think. What will India's next move be? Can Modi walk this tightrope for the long haul? We'll be keeping a close eye on this, and trust me, the next few months are going to reveal a lot.